call regular council meeting to order for City of St. John, February the 4th, 7 o'clock. Any additions to the agenda? Let it show there's no additions to the agenda. Any citizen comments?
Carol would like to say something.
Carol?
Yep.
Carol?
I'm Carol Long, and I am the board president of Gray Photo Studio Incorporated. And well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for serving on this council. This reminds me of school board days, and all I have to say is just thank you. But we're having a big push at Gray Studio, and we would like to invite everybody. And the city has always been very helpful in writing letters of recommendation, and we are having our open house. Would you pass those around? This next Monday on the 10th from 5 to 7, and we would love to have you all come and see our progress. We have really made great strides in the past year. We have had the HEAL grant, which was huge, and Ryan's been pushing hard for us through their office and writing grants, and so we would like to be serving the entire area, Stafford County and the surrounding area, as an art center and a museum. And we have already saved the building, and we'd just love for you to come and see our progress. It really looks great. We had some high school kids over there this last week helping us move some things, and you could hardly get them to pick anything up because they were so busy trying to figure out what it was. You know, it was so, you didn't want to hurry them because it was so interesting. So we would love for you to come. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I'll leave you to it.
Moving on, Ned Marks has some test results from well 6. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ned.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about well field that you have around the city and the conditions of well 6, as well as some water sampling that Jason and I had done, and those results of what we're finding out. I started off, got a call from Jason, city was having a hard time getting a contractor to commit to putting a pump into well 6, and I said, well, I'll call him and see what we get done. We got that done. And then he was having questions about why the plant did not seem to be as efficient with the new media, and was alarming out and was concerned as to whether they had additional problems or not. And I said, well, the first thing we have to do is offset the lack of oversight that KDHE has no longer provides the city, in that with a treatment plant, there is what we call a point of entry, and that's the point of entry where the water goes into the city, and that is the only point that KDHE is concerned about. They could care less whether you have problems with your wells, just take care of it. And so that's kind of where the city gets basically set up to fail, if you will, by KDHE. And then we have as a result of that, we went and did some sampling at well 6, 3, and 5. We did not sample 7 and 8. I was hoping we could do that with the machine at the plant and utilizing the city's nitrate test kit, but what we have about figured out is one or both of those may not be calibrated, and we're not sure what's going on because the numbers really don't jive very well with between the two machines and with what we're seeing from the lab. So we'll start with let me back up. We had this report that we did for well 6. One of the issues that we had found with well 6 is that it's shedding iron pretty bad. It's typically it's aggressive water with the chlorides to a certain extent, as well as when we have low carbon steel casing and stainless steel together, we get galvanic corrosion that occurs between those two, and that's not uncommon to see the first 5 to 10 feet above the stainless steel screen start to rot away with that low carbon steel. And we get lots of tubercles and we get a lot of iron bacteria, and that's what we're seeing on this first joint, as well as the picture in the back. The tubercle is this little house that the bacteria builds, that's on the pump, and they just sit back behind there and fall in love and hold hands and eat away. And they generate a lot of iron that goes into the system. And then that gets pumped to the plant, and we do see impacts at the plant from some of that. So the other thing that we see impacting the plant is we get resin fouling and degradation with iron deposits. A lot of that we think is from the bacteria that gets in the system and runs down the line, and it coats the resin. Now it doesn't necessarily damage the resin, but it makes it ineffective. So it's with time it becomes less effective as far as removing the nitrates as that gets coated. So there's some things that can be done with well 6 as well as any of the other wells that have that low carbon steel casing and stainless steel screen. We typically go in and put a liner in to shut off the corrosion on the inside of the casing. We can't do much with the backside, but we can shut it off on the inside, and we can eliminate that iron debris that comes off the casing on the inside that gets shoved down the line. Something to think about.
This figure is not of our resin. This is just
No,
an example.
but you do have impacted resins.
Okay.
The resin that come out of the system was about the color of the pipe, above reddish brown.
Okay.
And then the lines inside the plant coming off of the vessels are coated with iron as well. I've got one of the bag filters they changed out today, and I can send that in, and we can find out exactly what that is, whether it's iron bacteria, which I suspect it is. It's pretty typical of that type of setup, and we see it everywhere. You're not going to eliminate it, but we can manage it. And so that's one of the options. And the other thing that we are concerned about with, and we'll get into the chemistry a little bit after a while on this, is that these resins, what we're finding out is that if you have any sulfates in the water at all, those resins would rather take the sulfates than the nitrates. So I'm working with a city that has wells that are pretty high in nitrates, or fairly high in nitrates, not excessively high, but high enough, and they're low in sulfates. And when they run those wells to the plant and they pull the nitrates out of the water, the resin takes on that nitrate and stores that until it's regenerated. Well, if they turn on the high sulfate wells before that system regenerates, then the media throws off the nitrogen and picks up the sulfates and dumps the nitrogen into the drinking water going to town. They see a spike in the nitrates coming off the plant. Not handy at all, you know. And the question I got was, well, why did they do that? And I said, well, I don't know that anybody ever looked at it. I don't know, it's one of those deals I get called in after the fact to figure out what's going on. And in the forensic science, geoscience process, we find out that they've got quite a variation in water quality. And the city doesn't have a great variation on sulfates, but you do have a little bit. And what the data shows us is whatever sulfates are going into the plant, the plant is taking them out of the water. The thing we don't know is whether this particular situation is whether that is an accumulative effect on the resin or not. There's some of those resins that will accumulate that sulfate and it'll stay on the resin and will diminish its reactivity down the road. Don't know if that's the case. The only thing we could do is send in some of the old resin and see what impact that has had on it. As far as water quality testing, I know I'm throwing a lot of data out at you, and I expect there'll be a test tomorrow. But if you look at this page with all the numbers on it, those are the samples we took middle of December, and we took them at the well 5, well at the plant, at well 6, and at well 3, and what we saw was that what we were doing, we were collecting samples that went to SDK Lab, and Jason was running this test kit, and we were just collecting some general data on the well and pumping rate. And what we saw with these numbers was that the city's test kit consistently runs low compared to the lab. And I don't know if that's because the test kit's not calibrated, or if there is something in the water that is affecting that test kit that Hawk doesn't know about. And the other thing we don't know is whether the Hawk machine at the plant is calibrated either. There may be some issues there. One of the things that we see is that these are the nitrate numbers from the lab. Okay, and we're running anywhere from low of 9 to and a high of 20.8. And the bad part is none of these numbers are down; they're all up. And we'll look at some of that on the historical information. And then I showed some of the other data, the sulfate data, the iron data, and the manganese. We do see manganese impact on some of these resins, and we do see that impact on some of the water quality if it's bad enough. It doesn't appear the city has a real manganese problem, and you don't have a real serious iron problem. I was surprised with the numbers that were coming off the wells, but still seeing the impacts of that iron in the plant and in the piping. And so one of the things that we do know is that it doesn't take much iron to feed the bacteria, and that bacteria can cause a lot of problems. Typically Gallonella is the bacteria that we see. Any questions about this data at this point in time?
What's the KHE limit on nitrates?
The drinking water standard is 10.
10.
10, yeah. It used to be 20. In mid 80s, it went to 10. And there are some that would like to see it go to 5. If that happens, then 3/4 of the cities in the state of Kansas are doomed.
What's our nitrate number as it leaves the plant, typically?
We were the machine was showing 8.8, if I remember right today.
So, yeah, it fluctuates so
Yeah,
much.
sure. Sure.
And depending on what well you run.
Right.
And then
It
is there a
has to be under
requirement-
10 or it alarms, and that was one of the problems. That Jason was getting some alarms, and you know the plant is now 12 years old, and they do start showing their age, and they do require more and more time. The operators are, you know, they don't run themselves. You know, they were sold as a here, put this in, it'll take care of itself. They're automatic. You don't have to worry about them. Well, all that stuff is fine and great for 6 months to a year, and then everything starts aging out. One of the cities I'm working with has a plant that they had a check valve fail in the plant, and it flooded their salt storage tank out and dumped 4,000 pounds of salt out on the floor of the building. The bulk of it, we think, ran out to the lagoons through the floor drains, but there was a considerable amount of it that ran out the door and ran down and ponded around one of the wells and ran out onto the highway right away. So containment fails. You will hear me repeatedly, and I've said this repeatedly forever, is there's only 2 kinds of containment, those that fail and those that haven't been built. Okay, and whether it's lagoons, storage tanks, any of that stuff. And somebody said, well, you're pretty tough on containment. I said, well, show me one that doesn't leak. You know, eventually they all leak. It just takes time.
See, we were hoping, I was hoping to choke when we choked that down on 6. And then when I first got here, we started at 300,000 on each regen on that vessels. Well, now it's 275, and we're using more salt. Just like tonight, I got to ask about getting more salt. And now it only goes, and we can't. I could barely run that number 6 at choking that valve down, and then at 2 weeks, it's already going up to 11, 12, 13. So I have to go back to 5, use it until, and buy some time until it gets to 250 or 275. So now I'm thinking about choking it down to 250,000 per regen, and then we're using more salt. And then we're worried about the lagoons out back running over a salt brine, and then we're going to be in full to that. Then what do we do there? And so it's just it's like you said, it's a vicious cycle. This is what I'm worried about. And so if we keep using more salt, it fills up that, and then this is what I'm getting worried about.
Yeah, and
Because I just don't know what to do here.
legitimate concerns, because it can happen pretty quick. We can just continue to, as we do see the numbers at well 6. If you look at the page for well 6, when we sampled that in 2017, we were running 11, 12 on nitrates. In 2018, we were up to 15, and then in December, that says 2025. That's an error. In 2024. Where your startup sample was 16.7, and then the aquifer sample after an hour was 18.3. And when Jason was telling me he was having trouble with 12, and I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, because historically at 12, when we slowed that pump down, we got lower numbers. It doesn't make sense. So I thought, the only we can do is sample and see what's going on. But because you have a POE, KDHE could care less what is going on with the wells. That's your problem, and it is your problem, and you're stuck with it. And so when we got out there and we saw these samples, I thought, well, good grief, we're up 60%, 50% increase on the nitrates at that well site. I don't know why yet. We haven't got into that far, and that's something the city would have to decide if we're going to tackle or not. Well 5. We have a similar situation in 10. We were at 10.4. In early March, middle of March, we were 6, almost 7. And then February of 17, the hour sample was 13.5. That's basically the aquifer sample. That's the well is run for an hour, and we collected that sample. And then May of 18, we did a startup sample. We're still in the 13s. And the samples we collected the middle of December are 20.8 on startup and 15.8 on an hour sample. So they're up. From the initial one in 10, we're seeing almost 100% increase in the nitrates.
Do you see spikes in nitrate during times of drought? Is some of this just, are you gonna see those fluctuations and?
Yes, and sometimes we don't. It just depends on the environment and the location we're in, what the source of the water supply is, what aquifer the wells are producing from. We typically do not see the spike in nitrates in deeper wells that are properly constructed. And the vast majority of the wells out here aren't. KDHE's never enforced that.
What's the difference in a properly constructed well?
Grouting on the back side of the casing. So one of the things that we see happen is, this is a classic example right here. This is out of 7 and 8, the multiple wells site. We put monitoring wells in at certain levels, at specific levels. The shallow one was at 70 to 80 feet. Number 3 was 100 to 115 feet. Number 2 was 35 to 45 feet. And then we had test wells and other test holes in at around well 8. And we put those wells in and we screened specific intervals, and then we just got a couple of feet of gravel back above that, and everything else is grouted off. So we do not have downward migration down the borehole on those wells. And that is a very common occurrence. So it's called a contaminant pathway. And anytime those wells run that are hydraulically connected to any other portion of the aquifer, they will pull water in from those different zones. And at rest, if there is a zone, it's not present here, but we're working with a well site further west that the shallow aquifer has a static water level of 35 feet, and the deeper zone has a static water level of 111 feet. So we have 80 some feet of hydraulic head from that upper zone on that deeper zone that in our test wells, they're grouted out, so we're not going to get that migration. But in their production well that KDHE approved, the lousy design and had put in, they are getting water migrating from the upper zone across the elevated uranium and manganese areas, and we've got uranium and manganese problems in those wells. So well construction is key, as it says at the very top. You know, a deep well is no safer than a shallow one unless the upper part of the deep well is properly constructed to seal out all shallow water and surface drainage. And that was a KDHE, or pre-KDHE, State Board of Health publication from 1947. You know, it was relevant then, it's even relevant today, even as we continue on into the chemical age that we're in. So we can see water quality changes between those different zones. And one thing that's real important here is, when we did this work, Mel asked me, he said, well, we want to lease this ground out for farming, what do we do? I said, stop the fertilizer. They can't fertilize. They have to stop it. And so when you stop the fertilizer, in a year's time, you go from 24, 25 in that shallow zone to 12.3. So when we stop the fertilizer, this goes down. We know that. We've got so many instances where that happens. Well, we don't have a picture of well 3. Okay, so well 3, if we look at the page with all the data on it, well 3 is the one up by the swimming pool. Well 5 is down southeast part of town. It's surrounded by green grass and lots of gardens and sources of fertilizer. And when I say fertilizer, it doesn't make any difference whether it's ag or urban. Lawn and garden, we see a lot of problems off of lawn and garden fertilizer as well. So on this page, at well 3, we took a startup, which is the S, and an A sample, which is the aquifer sample. So a startup would have been within the first minute or so of operation, and then the aquifer is after it runs at least an hour. And we were seeing nitrates of 13.5 on startup and 14 on and the aquifer sample after it ran. And that well historically would be in the 4s and 5s. 6s, 7s. So we're up quite a bit on that well also as far as nitrates go. That historical page in there. I may have failed to knock out that sympathy. So where does all this end up? Is it ends up as you're eventually going to run out of, if this continues on, we don't have anything that shows them going down. If this continues on, eventually you're going to run out of plant. If this continues on, eventually you're going to run out of saltwater lagoon. And I can't tell you exactly when that's going to be, but I can tell you that we have no place to go with the saltwater right now. The only place we had before was over at South Hutch Cavern Storage would take that salt water because it's a commercial non-hazardous saltwater disposal facility, Class 1, and it can't go into Class 2 wells, into oil and gas wells. KDHE and KCC won't allow that. And so when we had a project where we went to them for disposal, this was 3 years ago, at that point in time, disposal was running $35 to $40 a ton of salt water. And that doesn't take very much salt water. 9.5 pound water, Bob, that'd be what, 200 gallons, roughly?
Roughly.
Yeah, so, doesn't take very many gallons, and we got a ton of salt water. It could easily run $40,000 to $50,000 per foot of water in your lagoons to get rid of, depending upon the size of your lagoon and how much water's in them. And that disposal fee is after you get it there. That's not the trucking cost to get it to the disposal facility. And the only one I know of right now, I think that is still in operation, is Oklahoma. I don't know of any others in Kansas at this point in time, but I haven't dug into the underground storage tank or underground cavern storage database to find out with KDHE if there's any others out there, or KCC that would take it. City of Hutch has a RO plant that generates a lot of salt water. They drilled their own disposal wells. They've got 2 disposal wells that they use. There's a few other individual disposal wells that are in place, but they're not commercial. And as these systems continue to see water quality changes, they're gonna require more and more time. Your operators are gonna be spending more and more time with your wells and with your treatment plant, just to keep them running, just to keep them in compliance.
What's the capacity of our lagoon, do you know? Like in general? And does any of that evaporate? Do you lose to evaporation?
Yeah, they're set up to evaporate, but you still end up with a salt that's left that will have to be disposed of at some point in time, whether it's solid or liquid. Because at some point in time, that lagoon will fail, not if, when.
I noticed it has started already hitting the pipe going over to the other one already. And it hasn't done that at all since but it has now. So
Well,
just
and that could be from the additional usage or the additional regeneration processes.
That's what I'm saying. This is another reason why I'm just wanting everybody to know here what's going on.
And just, I'm here to answer any questions that I can answer, but also to make you aware that when those lagoons fail and contaminates the groundwater, you'll be bringing in an RO plant to clean that up. And you'll wish you had a nuclear power plant to run that, because it's gonna take a lot of horsepower to run that, and it'll be expensive to clean up. They will consider that as industrial waste, and they're not gonna walk away from that. They're not gonna turn their back on the city and let them not do something. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I see it all the time. I've been doing this for a long time and worked with lots of different systems, and instead of KDHE working with the city and putting that money to use to fix the problem, all they did was make you put a Band-Aid on it. A very expensive Band-Aid, and one that's not going to fix the problem, okay? Medical terms, this is the groundwater industry and the water supply industry in the state of Kansas has a disease, and it's called nitrates. And it's no different than being a diabetic that's not willing to do things right, has a gangrene toe, and the state just comes in and said, well, just here, we'll provide the bandages. And it doesn't solve the problem, doesn't fix the problem. And you have to get in and get aggressive, either have to get aggressive about eliminating the fertilizer within the well field or finding a different well field to eliminate that problem. Otherwise, you will continue to have a plant. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a blending plant. I think those are great. We see and push for those as much as we can, just for the simple fact it gives you some flexibility with wells that you can trade off into the plant and blend the water and get good quality water into town. But it all takes time.
What do you mean by blending plant?
Well, all the wells go to the plant.
Sure.
Yeah, and so they can mix and blend that water depending upon the water quality. And if we had a well that was good quality water that we could bring to the plant, low nitrate water, then we could blend that with the other wells and not have to run it through the vessels and just dilute it. Dilution's a solution to pollution, so we would just dilute that down. But that would require really clean sources, relatively low nitrate sources. I'm talking 2s and 3s. They're out there. We see them, we find them. But once we find a location that would do that, or if we can offset one of the wells and find a suitable zone that has excellent water quality that we can just take right to that well site and blend right there and send it to the plant, that's a possibility. We looked at that with well 6, we went deep at well 6, but the salt was too high, it was 1,000 on chloride, so can't use that. But at the plant site, the deeper zone was low on chlorides and low on nitrates. So we were able to use that to blend a little bit, but if the other wells continue to go up, then that blending capability goes away. So, you know, there's been times that the wells were producing such low nitrate water that, you had 8 months that one year that you never got above 10 coming into the plant, but you can't turn the plant off. You still gotta run it. You still gotta burn the electricity and buy the salt.
But you can bypass the vessels in the plant, right, if it's coming in below 10?
No.
Not all the way.
No,
You
not
have to
100%.
run them, but we could dial it down to almost nothing. That's why the salt in the was really a low or, you know, low that year. It's just, you know, it just doesn't take near the regeneration. That's
Right.
what it does. Now it's just, cause it could be up to regenerating those vessels at 350,000, you know, gallons going through each vessel, where now I'm down to 275, just trying to keep it down below the 10 to 12, you know. And because I'm gonna have to, if it keeps up, I'm gonna have to keep it down. I'm gonna bump it down to 250 pretty quick.
And so there's things that the city ends up getting left behind on with some of this activity that KDHE has is because you have a POE, they don't monitor the individual wells like they used to. And so that falls back on the city. And you know, most of the cities don't understand that hey, put the plant in, it'll take care of itself, it'll run itself, it's all automatic, you know, no big deal. It doesn't really work, but they're finding out. And we've gotten to the point now where I've got a couple of people at KDHE that I've been working with that they understand small cities can't afford plants. They just simply can't afford them. They've got a city up in northwest Kansas that got an arsenic plant for 43 meters. And they can't even begin to pay for it. Never mind, make it work, because they don't have the people to work on it. They don't have the people to run it.
So with your experience with these other municipalities that are in this position that we're in, or maybe they're further down the road, what's the plan of action that you tell them to plan for it, to fix it?
Well, find low nitrate water. That's where you gotta start.
Is that what you tell us?
Yeah.
That's our first step?
That's your first step. You gotta find low nitrate water. And then I think that the other critical thing is we need to increase the sampling frequency on these wells. Instead of every 3 or 4 years, they need to be sampled. Quite frankly, they should be sampled monthly. Now, we don't have to do as an extensive an analysis. We do nitrates basically only, and you're looking at $7 to $10 a sample, roughly maybe 12.
And start that in-house?
Yeah.
This testing
Well,
process?
they can collect them, but they'll need to go to the lab. So that we've
Okay.
got a certified lab giving us results. Now, I do strongly recommend that whenever those samples are collected, that you go ahead and run your test kit and make sure it calibrates. And that's a good indicator. And if something spikes, Jason can go out there and say, well, we're not sure where it's coming from. Why the plant's acting the way it is, because we're not seeing a change at the well. And that can give you some immediate information versus 2 or 3 days, 4 days on a turnaround at a lab.
Well, what's protocol for calibrating this kit that you're talking about? Jason should be testing?
Yeah, he'd have to have
Using-
Hawk come in and do
Yeah,
that.
It's not our kit, it's somebody else's?
no, it's ours.
Okay.
Like I said, when he comes in, I'll have him
Yeah.
go ahead and calibrate it.
Hawk has people on staff. Hawk is the chemical company
Okay.
that sells these units and sells these testers, Lamont's another. They have people that come in and calibrate those machines, and they can calibrate his as well. And they have a standard. They'll have, and he can get a standard from Hawk. Here's 5 milligram per liter of nitrates, here's 10, here's 25, whatever. But that's all gonna be nitrates and distilled water. It's not going to be nitrates and city water. And so one of the questions that you need to ask him, is there anything else in our water that may be impacting this test kit that's causing a misread? So that can happen.
Then you would say do that immediately.
Yeah, I would start that as soon as possible, because the more information you have on that end, then the better informed decisions you can make as far as how you proceed with either exploration or managing the wells themselves.
As far as locating better water, is that where you come in? with
I
your
can do that.
sources?
I do that. I'm not the only one. There's one of the few that do it. But
How difficult is that today? I mean, we've already gotten water rights stripped from wells, so finding a new well, I mean, how does the water rights work?
well, right now, we have the opportunity to move some wells out of the Rattlesnake Creek Basin without losing the water right. And so we can move those outside of that 2 mile corridor with KDH, or not KDHE, DWR and GMD5's cooperation. They will allow that to happen. The other advantage we have is that it's in the public interest. You know, to help the city. You don't want any more water. You know, we've gone through many rounds with DWR on this very issue. We had a city that had 2 wells. They needed a third well for redundancy, because if they have 2 wells, they're okay. But if they lose one of their wells in the summertime, they can't keep up. And our goal was to add a third well. And DWR's initial response was, no, you can't do that. Well, yeah, we can. Well, no, you can't, because you already have 2 wells. You can put a third well in, but you can't pump it. No, we're gonna put a third well in, we're gonna pump it, because the last thing I want is the city sitting out there with a third well that isn't being pumped, and then all of a sudden needs it and it won't run. So it's gonna be put in the cycle. We're not going to take any more water, and we're not gonna take any more rate than what we already approved for, but we're gonna have the redundancy in the system. And they finally recognized that, hey, that's in the public interest, that's okay, that works. So that, now, we're not gonna do that in ag, not gonna happen. But the cities have a little more flexibility and capabilities in that. You know, you have a well go bad on the farm, you know, you might be 2 or 3 weeks before you get a well, maybe. Depending upon schedules, but right now, you know, we would be looking at probably 2 years before we could get worked through the permitting process and get everything approved.
Where, I'm not super familiar of the map and where the 2 mile radius of the basin is. Do we have city property that is
No.
outside of that? We'd have to go acquire that property and.
Right. And one of the, you know, I get, well, you know what that's gonna cost? It's not gonna cost $4 million. You know, it's not gonna cost that. You already own the ground at the plant site. It does generate some income. I'm assuming it's still being leased out. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it's still being leased out. Historically, we never recommended the cities or rural water districts to own the ground. But right now, we're finding out, in order for the city or rural water district to protect themselves in the long term, they need to own the ground, and they need to own that area up gradient of that well called the source water protection area. They need to own that so that they can control that. It's cheaper by far to do that up front than it is to come in and fix the problem. Yeah. By far
We
cheaper.
own the land on the land, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and part of the problem we have there is because those lagoons are now there, the wells were first, and then they put the lagoons in. Well, now, that really limits whether I can do anything out there with new wells because those lagoons are there, because KDHE requires us to stay away from salt storage facilities and industrial lagoons. So let's put it in the well field. Never made sense. Didn't make sense then, still doesn't make sense. And I've got a couple of people up there that I've been working with that, they finally got it figured out. And we're, it's just taken a long time to get that process done. And then your O&M costs, I don't have any idea what your O&M costs on that plant, but I'm gonna guess they're somewhere between 50 and 80,000 a year by the time you figure what the beads cost. What the beads cost, that change.
112?
Well, over 17.
Yeah, all right, 115,000. So basically 10,000 a year, on the age of the plant. And that will be, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that will not be the same price next time. So,
It's a pretty sturdy limb you're standing on.
yeah. But then again, I'm probably not gonna be around to have somebody cut it off underneath me, but that's,
So what's that process look like to start the acquisition and searching for that well?
well, we'd have to delineate an area that we could go look at. I would like to stay north of the tracks as much as possible, just for the simple fact that getting underneath the railroad is a bear cat.
With the water line?
That would fall into the engineer's job, but the railroad can be troublesome to work with.
And then in a situation like this, before you would acquire the ground and the rights to drill a well, are you able to figure out if there's nitrates? Because you wouldn't want to go through the whole process,
Sure,
drill a
yeah,
well, and then
if they will allow
this has got
access.
15,
Right.
you know, and
It's,
it's just as bad as the other ones.
My recommendation is, on these deals is number one, we get an easement. With an easement with an option to buy if everything turns out. And we get that signed up front, and the reason for that, I work with a rural water district that we had a terrible time finding a place to drill. And one of the board members said, hey, we've got ground over here, come test drill. Okay, so we get over there and we test drill, and he's brought up to date every meeting that I attend, and you know, here's where we're at, this is what we're gonna do, this is what's going on, great, perfect, no big deal. We have identified 2 well sites and have all the permits done, and we are down to signing the easement for the new wells. And that's when we find out that this is ground that his wife had inherited from her dad before they got married, and she didn't know anything about it, what was going on. Yeah,
How big area is the source around the well?
we have to have a minimum of 100 feet sanitary easement by KDHE. But most of your source water protection areas on wells of this size, we would look at probably a quarter-mile circle around that well, and then 1 to 2 miles up gradient. Now, we don't have to control all of that, we don't have to own all that, but having an easement on some of that. And if it's grass, it makes it a lot easier. You know, these sand hills, they're not gonna go in and do anything for the most part. The problem we have there is we would have to be careful of any drilling that would happen to go on in that source water protection area, oil and gas, cathodic protection, anything like that. Then the last thing we want to do is end up with a housing development on that piece of ground, because houses generate nitrates. And we see a lot of problems associated with wells that were fine until the housing developments went in, and when the grass is so green it hurts your eyes, the nitrates go down because they get watered in so much they just push them right on down through the soil profile, especially in environments like this. Out west, if we're in the Dakota Formation and we've got 150 foot of shale above us and the well's properly grouted, doesn't make any difference what goes on the land surface. Then the issue becomes what's drilled out there, because then that next borehole becomes a contaminant pathway if it's not properly grouted. So that would be the control issues. Thing we would wanna do is find a cooperating landowner that would be willing to work with the city and understand that, you know, we're gonna have some assurances or be able to buy the ground. There is some grant money. I backed up, let me back up. There may be some grant money to help do that with source water protection, as well as some of the expiration issues, maybe, through KDHE. I know they, out of their program last year, through their source water protection, which the city could have utilized some of that money on some sampling, they ended up having to give back $1 million to the EPA because they didn't have anybody in the program that was willing to make it work and get it used. So, don't want to discourage development, but in the same token, that well sitting out there by itself without being anything going on is a huge asset for the city. You know, that generates just as much money as sometimes the development that would go around it, just for the simple fact you're not having to spend money on it and protect it or treat it.
I mean, it sounds like that's the best option long term, but I guess I don't know how quickly you start looking into stuff like that.
I can bring back I can send out a area, you know, a suggested area to look, if you want. That would be up to the council as to how we do that. But,
At one time, there was.
I don't wanna rush you, but you do have time
Yeah.
right now, and I don't wanna make,
Long process.
you know,
Even if
it's a long process, and we wanna make sure that we're covering the right ground at the right pace and getting things done in a fashion that, number one, doesn't break the city, and number two, gets done what the city needs to be doing. So,
At one time, there was some ground out east of town that could have been acquired. The last time when we went with the plan. Whether it's still available, I don't know.
And it was outside of the rattlesnake.
Yeah, it's about 3 miles out there.
it would be outside of the rattlesnake corridor. You have to be 2 miles
But
off
then
the rattlesnake.
the cost of the pipe getting it to the city was, I can't remember the figures on it, but it was astronomical.
Yeah, I would guess that probably looking at probably looking at 100,000 a mile. We my guess right now for pipe, just for the simple fact that pipe's expensive, and running the machineries to do it, to dig it's expensive anymore. It's numbers are up quite a bit. Just before COVID, we sent a project out for bid, and it came back in. The engineer had estimated it at $1 million, and it come in at 1.8. And that was just simply because of the blow up in price of materials and keeping people working.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know anything about it, but I'd be surprised if you go this route and you drill the well and you acquire ground and you lay pipe. I mean, you'd be in the million, you'd be above $1 million. Pretty easy.
I can't remember how big a line that was. We were
It's
gonna
a
have
function
to-
of the size of the well, Bob, you know, depending on how many gallons we send to the plant, whether we store water at the plant and use it, or whether we just try to blend correctly or directly at the plant. But you're probably looking at least 6-inch, maybe 8-inch main,
And
maybe
that
10-inch.
seems to me like that pipe, if I remember, was like $22 a foot or $26 a foot, going from my memory.
wouldn't be surprised.
I can't,
You know,
it had to be a certain type of pipe.
It's gonna have to be C900,
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember all.
it's gonna have to be approved water line.
Yeah, I have to acquire easement for it to run all the
Yeah.
way into town too.
And at some point in time, we'll have to have an engineer.
And if I remember right, I can't remember what the deal was. It was on Cornwell, if I remember right. I'm going strictly from my memory. That was before we got to the plant.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Kevin would remember or not. He was on council, me and him done a lot of work on it. In fact, we took samples all the way around town out a couple miles, trying to figure out where the nitrates were coming from. And they're pretty much high all the way around. Tony Delp's well down here, I remember it was eight parts per million.
At the house,
No, on the irrigation.
on the irrigation well.
And the one down south on Dudley was 26, southeast. Well, what was that circle where that, railroad tracks going? Kevin could probably and he might remember better than me.
I think I have that data.
If you probably do.
I
We
think I
went out
have
and
that
tested
data.
wells, irrigation wells. I wanna say 24 wells, I think, around St. John, for some good water. I think you sent them in for us, come to think of it.
No, you
No.
guys collected those samples. I wasn't involved in the sampling part of it. I just got the data.
I can't remember who we sent them to.
I think those went to Servatec. Servatec or
Could be.
SDK, one of the two.
Just for some information,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, for council. It gets very expensive, I can tell you that.
The days of easy water in Kansas were over. You know, they're over. With the ag chemicals and not only the ag chemicals, this PFOS has become such a huge deal. Of course, the nitrates, there is a group that would like to see the nitrates going to town be 5 or less. I remember when it was 20, we never had any trouble. Not very many cities were 20, but they didn't ask for it. So,
I think we was 13 when they went to 10, if I remember.
yeah, you would've had wells that would've been that high, but you would've had wells that weren't.
Yeah.
But you didn't have blending capabilities at that
No.
time.
As for this iron bacteria, are there ways to tackle that?
Yes, there are. That's what I'm gonna be doing the rest of this week, is I've got probably one of the worst wells in the state of Kansas that I've worked on. That's, just inundated with iron bacteria. They've ran for 30 years, hadn't done anything. And, it's pretty well loaded up with iron bacteria. We're going to get in and clean the well and get it back into service. And, it's gonna take some routine testing, but that particular well is, put in, Jason, was that 92, 96 that well was put in, number 6? It's 30 years old. That's, I've seen some of these at 30 years old that have got holes in the casing big enough to put my fist in. I don't think that's what we're gonna find here, but I think we're gonna find a galvanic corrosion zone that'll be pretty rough. And, but that can be fixed and that can be managed. And we can get, extend the life of the well. That can be done. And then go right back in with the existing pump and motor, column pipe. So basically, we would clean the well out and put the liner in and do the treatments on the screen interval and get that cleaned up and address the nitrates and you're looking at probably somewhere between, with a liner, probably 30 to 40,000, roughly. You get depending on what the contractor would.
I was gonna say, is that something that Terrain does, or you get contractor to come in and do that work?
Well, we have the contractor do the work. I do the work plan and the project oversight.
Yeah.
To make sure that we get what the city needs. Basically act as the city's inspector as well. So.
And this is the only well that has this problem
No,
at the moment?
well 3's in bad shape. We haven't been in well 5, but well 3's in bad shape also. That was originally looked at, oh my gosh, that was probably looked at 15 years ago, but nothing was ever decided on it that I know of.
Is there, let's say we wanna fix the bacteria problem. Is there any risk in doing it in a cascading approach where you do well 6 this year, you do well 3,
Oh, I think that's
another
a
year later?
Yeah, that's a
I mean,
good
is there
plan.
any risk in the bacteria being still in well 3, you fix well 6,
Doesn't,
and
well,
then it runs for 2 years, and then you come back and the
Well-
bacteria has migrated to wells
Well,
because they're
yeah.
tied to the same system?
yeah, it's no.
No.
That's not going to be an issue.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that may have to happen is we may have to treat the lines. One of the things that we can do is we look at ATP, which is a protein that each cell has on bacteria. And we were having trouble with a system. The well was doing similar things, shedding a lot of iron. And what we found out is that was that dumping that iron out in the pipeline going to their treatment plant, which was an iron and manganese removal plant. And so we ended up sampling that pipeline, and the ATP count was 1,000,000 on bacteria count. So the pipe itself was okay because it was PVC, but it was just all of the debris that was being dumped in the pipe from the wells that was just laying in there because the wells aren't chlorinated, and the bugs are holding hands and falling in love and doing the bug thing and growing and eating on that iron and generating lots of bacteria. So those are some of the things that we could do with monitoring. If the pipeline needs to be cleaned up, get it cleaned up and then put it back into service. The problem with treating some of these wells is we have to make sure we have all the chlorine out of that system before it goes to the plant, because that chlorine will damage the beads, it'll damage the media. So we can't have any chlorine going into the vessels. And that would be monitored with chlorine kits that the city has as far as getting those cleaned up, so.
Because you use the chlorine to clean them, but then you have to make sure the chlorine's out of the system
Yes,
before.
actually, we may want to pig the line. I mean, it may take a pigging process to get the debris out of that line so that the chlorine can actually work on the bacteria or the portions of the pipe that needs to be cleaned. And then we can just monitor that with sampling. And if the ATP counts start going up, then we'd go back into the cleaning process again.
So when you're still in the testing these wells process, correct? You're still in the process of testing some more wells?
Well, we don't have anything scheduled. That would be up to the council as to whether we continue to do that. But it would be beneficial to probably another couple of weeks go do another round of sampling, Jason, on all the wells, so that we start building a database. Because I'm looking at 3 to 5 year gaps in the data on some of these wells, but the trend is all up. And
Well, you're giving us a lot of information. We're coming at you with questions like, well, can we do it in a
Yep.
progressive manner? Is there a way we can get, and I don't know, do we get a contractor to do consulting to tell us what you found and what a plan of action is, so we
The
can implement
contractors
it?
aren't really gonna be able to do that, would fall into me, but what
That's what
I
I'm
would,
talking about,
what I
you.
would recommend is that, the city get a hold of Pat McCool with the Kansas Rural Water Association and have him come in and look this over and see what he says. He's a chemical engineer, retired from KDHE, he was a district manager, pretty sharp.
Super guy.
And you don't have to pay him,
Super guy, guys.
yeah.
Would you say get 4 months of data and then have him look at
No,
consistent
I think we
data?
start him right now.
Okay.
As far as get him in, to
That's
look at the
step one.
plant, and look at the plant, and look at the data that we already have. And let him look at that and see what's going on.
Get a game plan.
Yeah, and then we can look at making some recommendations for the city as far as, where we head. But
What'd you say his name was, Pat?
Pat McCool,
McCool.
McCool, COOL. Yeah, and he works for Kansas Rural Water Association.
Yeah, this was the main thing. Like you said, it could take 2 to 4 years to get this done. And this is why I wanted to throw this out to you now, so we have that time down the road
Right.
for you to get, this is why I want to do this now.
Well,
So you have time to plan.
And hard decisions don't have to be made now, but I just wanna, ask all the questions
Right.
you can and get, you
Yeah.
know, started down a path.
and Jason caught that. You know, if he hadn't called me and said, "Hey, why isn't this working?" I don't know. You know, not my plant.
I think we need to
You know?
get these tests to see what's going on here.
Yeah, and
With
it
that
doesn't
plant.
have to be the full blown test. Like I said, we can back that up. The nitrates and maybe sulfates, but nitrates only would give us a lot of information.
Is there a requirement on maximum amount of sulfates allowed?
Yes, 250 is the secondary drinking water standard on sulfates. We're a long ways from that. I think we only have one well that's over 20. But
There's a reading
Good
here,
question.
286. What's that? Or is that supposed to be 28?
oh no, that's off of one of the test holes, and that
Oh,
had to be. I suspect that was from bacteria, sulfate reducing bacteria that had accumulated in the bottom of the hole.
Okay.
And when we got that air lifted out, the next sample was really low.
Yeah, I see that. It's
Um,
close.
But one of the things you want to look at is on the plant influent. We were on the sulfates. We were 19.1, and on the plant vessels and the plant blend, they're all less than 5. So what
They're
that
getting
tells,
taken out.
they're getting taken out. And but what I don't know is if that's an accumulative effect. So if it is an accumulative effect, then every sulfate that plant pulls out, it's putting that into storage into the media, and it makes the media less effective on the nitrates. But I've got a lab that
If that
should be
becomes-
able to take the old beads and look at them and see if how much sulfate they have accumulated over their lifetime.
And maybe this is a dumb question, but
No dumb questions.
if it becomes an issue that the sulfates are causing the beads to be ineffective or less effective and cause us to have more and more regeneration time, more and more salt accumulation into the lagoons, can you retool a plant to have stage 1 take sulfates out and then go into a nitrate removal so that you tool your plant in a way that you're not causing your nitrate concentration part of your plant to get those out to be affected by the sulfates coming in and stealing the process?
That may be an option, but I think we can go back to the media manufacturer and say, look, we're tired of pulling sulfates out. We want them to pass on through. Let's take the nitrates out. Let's concentrate on that.
They can adjust how the
You know,
media is made
this
or
stuff
the
changes.
concentration of
Yeah,
that
this stuff changes so fast, and overall water quality, for the most part, probably was not even looked at when that plant was put in. It was high nitrates, get rid of the nitrates, and as long as KDHE was seeing the nitrates were under 10, they weren't worried about anything else. Historically, we had people at KDHE at the district offices that would get the state reports, and they would look at those. Pat was one of those. He had the Northeast District, and I worked with those district managers and district engineers or district geologists, whichever they were. They would get those cities' reports, and they would look at that, and they would compare them historically, and they'd go to the city and say, "Hey, look, your numbers are going up here. What's going on?" And they try to get ahead of it. Well, now nothing happens until you're out of compliance, and then you get a letter from KDHE saying, "Well, you're out of compliance. Fix it." There's no preemptive work being done.
Now, I'd say, at least my consensus would be to get a hold of Pat and start that conversation with him, see if he wants to go down that same, if he has the same opinion on potentially finding another water source, just kind of get in the information gathering stage of this, because it'll probably be a long conversation.
Yeah, it will be. Should be. And I'm really not, I would recommend that you all go through that process before we do anything else, as far as what I would deal with. And make sure that make sure he's seeing things right, or I'm seeing things right, one of the two. We beat on each other on a pretty regular basis on some of this stuff, so every now and then I win. But
Well, I'll get a hold of him and we can still plan on doing those other tests. If we want to.
pull a set of samples,
Yeah, or samples.
that's up to the council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're up for that, then yeah.
Okay,
Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you, man.
I hope it helped.
Well, it's helping.
Thanks, Dave. Council, got any discussion about the water here, or you already discovered everything you needed to discover? At this
Start
time,
off talking to this fellow and go from there.
Ed, Kyle, you okay?
Do you need consensus to do those samples? I mean, I'd say continue on that,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
but unless somebody else has something else to say about
Okay, ready to move on?
Yep.
Stafford County Economic Development Downtown Master Plan. Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Good to see you all this evening. I hope you were able to get my report on the different activities that we're doing. Next week, we'll have the 2 new houses that will be inspected. And so those will be for rent, starting in the middle into this month.
it. Are you gonna try to sell them or just straight for rent?
I have kind of like a deadline in terms of trying to use the other half of the grant funds. And I have to have the first 4 houses occupied before I can access those. And houses are not selling very quickly right now. And so I don't know if I have the time to sit on them for a while, but I'll wait a little longer for the rest of them to try to sell those. So, yeah. Once we get through the grant process and get the houses built, maybe after the first year, we can try to sell them once we get through that process. So, Carol already told you about Gray Studio. We had an opportunity with USDA Water Fund, like the gentleman there said. A lot of times government has money left over in different programs that they don't want to go back into the big pot of money in DC. And so they called us and asked if we had projects that could potentially fit the description of the 2022 disaster. There's like a storm in 22 that affected the area, and so we were in like a disaster relief area, and there was money that was appropriated for the region for that time, and it was connected to water infrastructure. And so with Pam's help and EBH, your guys' engineers, there was able to come up with a project that fits some of the needs that the city has. And so they've just now designated the funds, about $35,000 to the city to be able to use for backup generators to help with if the electricity goes out in a disaster, there will still be backup to pull the water for wastewater and also drinking water. So that will be an implementation process. I think they're calling soon, I think, to move things in the next stages of that.
I was gonna ask if there was a timeline on that work has to be done in the next months, years. You have to spend the
There's no
money
real
and-
timeline. They were worried more about the timeline of appropriating the money versus the amount of time it takes to actually do the project.
Okay.
So they had a deadline, several deadlines that we had to meet very quickly. And that last deadline was the end of January. And I worked with them on the grant proposal with the engineers and Pam to get the information in. And then they alerted us that the money was obligated, so that it was. So that it was a very tight timeline. And so we had to move very quickly on that. So
now you go through bid processes to install the generators and stuff.
yeah, they're gonna contact us this week and tell us kind of next steps in that. So yeah, there will be a bid process for all that. So
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks for your help on that.
yep. There's another opportunity. USDA put out a notice about the Rural Business Development Grant that's available. And there's a number of different categories that they outlined in the grant. And one of them was a downtown master plan. And so there's different elements to it, but basically we would get some free services for what's the definition of what they call it? Basically repurposing buildings. And so there's actually a class 8 offered for free that we have access to. I can actually send you the information on that if you'd like to do that. But the grant process itself is due at the end of February. And they did not tell me that deadline until like a week ago. And so the process has been kind of quickly moving. So we had to work with this consulting group first to identify basically the project area that we would focus on. And then it moved to the application process. So there's only 13 towns that have showed interest in this program. St. John and Stafford are 2 of those 13. And basically the project would work where if you guys agree, there's a resolution that I think Danny and I talked about a little bit. I think there needs to be a little bit of time to get the wording correctly, but the project itself would be a reimbursement grant to be able to work with a consultant to develop the downtown area, a plan to develop it. And so the deadline would be end of February. If we're approved, the money would come in June or July, and then the consulting work would start in August, and then we would have a master plan for the downtown area by December. It's kind of the plan for that.
So is that 13 towns in Kansas or across the United States? With it being a
It's the US. It's the US.
So there's only 13 across the United States that have shown interest in this.
Well, we followed through the steps.
Sure.
So, and I think people drop off at each level.
Sure.
So we followed up on it, and so I'm working with one of the guys at USDA in DC, and he's working on our application process. And so they'd actually write most of the grant, and we would just fill in some details, and then they're applying with us for $49,500 for the grant itself, and then we would go into the process of finding a consultant to do the work and that sort of thing, if approved. So basically the resolution says that I can work on your behalf to apply and then also administer the grant. Grant administration basically is just filing paperwork, organizing meetings, working with consultants, things like that. And the planning process would be involving people like Pam, somebody from your zoning board. I was thinking maybe Dennis Beach would be involved with that as well. And then getting pre-approval process for each step of the way by the council.
Is this information you're speaking, I don't remember reading it in here. Is this something new? As far as the dates that you just gave us?
Yeah, I didn't put the dates down on
Okay.
there, sorry.
There's just a lot of dates and things that are supposed to happen on timeline that are verbal, and I'm a lot better if it's written. Before, it's just easier for me to make a decision that way than just
Okay.
trying to remember what you said.
Yeah, I understand that. The issue with doing like exact dates is we work with the government and they're not very on time a lot of times. And so it's hard to like say an exact month or date because sometimes things are delayed 3-4 months and that's just a part of the process. And so any dates I give are guesstimations at best because of what they've told me of what the process would look like. There have been times that we're delayed, like the Main Street program, right? They've approved it in September. They told me it's gonna happen right away. They still haven't gotten me anything, and that's not me, it's them.
Well, that's cool.
And, yeah.
I mean, if it's,
Yeah,
I mean, I know, you know how it works when we don't. I just
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
take people's word at face value unless
Okay.
it's written down. It's nothing
Okay.
personal.
Yep.
It's just, what did he say? Oh, we'll have to go back to the meeting, listen to the recording to see what, it's just too much work.
okay,
So if something changes, we approve it based on what you've given us.
sure,
If something changes and you
Yeah.
tell us, then it changes. This is the way it goes.
yep. Okay,
Yeah, Danny, did you read through that resolution? Did you have any
I
concerns?
did,
or-
and I told Ryan if I could have until the next meeting to come back and tell you guys, yeah, I'm good with it. I just didn't have enough time to
okay.
get through it and feel comfortable with it at this point.
I had USDA do an edit today of the resolution, because the resolution itself was a template of basically what they want it to be said.
Okay.
So if there's language that you want in there that states some of the stuff that we're discussing right now, that's fine, we can put that in the resolution, it's okay with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So when and this is just based on what I remember you saying, that we get a consultant to come in and have a master plan. So do we go by what the consultant says we should do, or,
The
And-
consultant will be consulting with you on what we like to
What we
see
like
as far as.
yeah, so
the
we
master
would,
plan
we would be,
To
yes.
create it.
To create it.
To create.
So we would be telling them like, hey, this is kind of our vision for the downtown. And they would say, okay, based on what we see, what the buildings are and that sort of thing, what you're saying makes sense here, but it might not make sense here. And they would work with us to kind of define what that would be. So, yeah. And I don't want you guys to think like I'm just wanting to just run off and do like a rogue master plan or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm actually offering to do this to help out and help Pam out so she doesn't have to do a lot of paperwork
I
and
mean,
stuff like that.
and ultimately, you could go down this whole route. I wouldn't want to do this because I think we desire for this to be a collaborative effort, and the
Mhm.
master plan is what we would want it to be. But this doesn't just, the master plan doesn't just go into effect. Essentially, they would help us write it, and then we would pass a resolution accepting the master plan for
I
the
would,
downtown district.
I would say,
essentially.
yeah, well, I would say the master plan would be a guide for the next few years of activities that maybe you would want to do.
Sure.
It's a guide. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that it's like a definite plan that you have to implement.
Of course, but I guess
Yeah.
I mean, if there's something that we don't like, we're not tied to the plan essentially. So
Yeah, I would
there's
say
very
that,
low
yeah.
risk to
Yeah.
the city to create. The master
Correct.
plan.
Yes, exactly. Low risk.
It's basically just a
just-
comprehensive plan for the downtown area.
And I know in the past, we've been talking about, you guys have been talking about doing, a city plan and that sort of thing. I thought maybe this could be maybe a piece of that city plan that maybe you could roll into the greater city plan
Yeah,
later.
It helps you have a vision of 10 years down the road. What are 5 projects in the next 10 years that we'd like to see to make it just a little bit better? That type of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd say let Danny read through it and give us his opinion next meeting, and I think it could be a good thing.
And it's not a matching grant, so if we are granted, then it's 100% funded. So it doesn't cost us anything.
Just time.
Yeah, just saying.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay,
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
thank you. Yep.
Moving on, consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the council meeting January 21st, 2025.
Make a motion to approve regular council meeting minutes, January 21st, 2025.
Got a motion on the table by Brant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron Raines. Any more discussion? All in favor? Passes 5-0. I'd entertain a motion for appropriation ordinance number 123, 124 AP2 for the amount of $822.54.
Make a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 123, 124 AP2 in the amount of $822.54.
Got a motion on the table by Bryant. Your
Second.
second?
Second.
Second by Aaron Raines. All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0. I'd entertain another appropriation ordinance 0204 25 AP for the amount of $110,140.17. If I could get a motion.
Make a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 020425 AP in the amount of $110,140.17.
Got a motion on the table by Bryant. Is there a
Second.
Second
Second.
by Aaron Raines. All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0. I'd entertain a motion. You wanna discuss that before we entertain a motion?
Sure, I put everything on my report.
Yeah,
if
it's
you guys
on-
got a
Yeah.
chance to
Clerk
review it.
report
Yeah.
about the carnival.
Good job.
Yeah.
Making the
Anybody?
decision.
Now, my question from earlier before we start, where did you find these guys?
So they were at one of my CLIP conference and I got their information.
Nice.
I wasn't able to get them here last year because they were already booked. So this year I reached out in December and I was fighting with the other town, so I just went ahead and signed a contract before.
Good job.
The only question I have, I guess, looking through their info, so in the past, carnivals have come, and then they make the money off of ticket sales. So, since we're paying them, are we as a city managing ticket sales
So
and
we-
trying to recoup
Yeah.
those funds, essentially?
Yes. We don't have to, if we don't want to, we can just let people ride for free. I'm just afraid that how the economies and stuff like that, we're not gonna be making as much in donation to cover. So I'm going to try to sell some tickets just to recoup some of that money back.
No, I think we should.
So-
Makes sense.
Even, I mean, it doesn't have to be
No.
state fair,
No,
it
oh,
costs you
no.
$3 to
Yeah.
ride this ride and $5 to ride that ride.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
but, I would, one ticket gets a ride.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Make it simple, cause you don't wanna manage that either.
No, I was thinking of like a wristband for the day. So Friday would be one color, Saturday would be one color, and you
Yeah.
pay one price and you ride as many as you want to for that day.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's probably fine.
I like
So,
that. I think
but
the
I
kids would
haven't-
love that.
Yeah, but I haven't, I don't have enough data to see how much it would be for one wristband. You know, I don't
To
want
know
to charge
what that
too
cost
much.
is, yeah.
Yeah, to where kids can't afford it and it's hard on their parent, but I want to make a little money to
Help.
pay back. So I haven't.
And then the
worked
other
that
thing I
out yet.
noticed is like, I can't remember what the count was. I looked through that there's volunteers needed from the city to help
Yes.
run different rides. So
Yes.
we'll have to make sure we cover those.
Yeah, so the guys are mandatory having to work this Jubilee, so they're gonna be manning each of those machines, so, or help man each of those machines.
Do you take into consideration like trying to manage how many kids there are? Is there a way that carnival people know how many times the rides were used, or so we can gauge?
I don't know. I guess it's
Okay.
depending on the number of people that are attending and, you know, the dynamic of the event, I'm assuming. So,
I mean, I'd say this is a first year, and we'll have a good idea if we lose a lot of money or if we end
sure.
up covering a decent amount. Even even if you take a little loss, I think the
For the
overall
city.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the overall consensus of the city is the rides have been missed the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, it's really damaged the amount of participants at the Jubilee. So, I mean, it's all depend after Jubilee. We'll talk about it. If we don't make enough, then I might have to ask the city to pay whatever the Jubilee fund can't cover. But we don't know that yet. So, but that's it.
I'm excited for your mom's food.
You
Make
didn't
sure-
even order.
Miranda said she was going to.
Well, she hasn't. Yeah.
Make sure the council understands it's 17,150, 17,000.
Yes.
Do we need to approve that full amount?
I
That's
need
the total
this.
amount.
Yeah, I need this approved to send the check
pay.
out the first half, and we can wait until after Jubilee to see how much money we would need.
How much is free food?
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Any more discussion?
Nope.
I'd entertain a vote for the Allison's Fund Incorporated to give authority to Pam to go ahead and write that first check if it's a motion you wanna make or whatever.
I'll make a motion to approve the first half of Allison's Fund Incorporated invoice in the amount of $8,575.
Got a motion on the table by Grant. Here, a second.
Second.
Second by Aaron Raines. Any more discussion? All in favor? All
Jump the
opposed?
gun there.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion for Foley Equipment in the amount of $2,542.92.
Make a motion to approve invoice from Foley Equipment in the amount of $2,542.92.
Motion on the table by Bryant. Here, a
Second.
second by Aaron Raines. All in favor? All opposed? I'd entertain a motion from Stone Sand Company to pay an invoice of $2,912.56.
Make a motion to approve invoice from Stone Sand Company in the amount of $2,912.56.
Motion on the table by Bryant. Here, a
Second.
second by Aaron Raines. All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0. Department head, Electric Department, Curtis.
The only thing I really got is a quote from Foley's for the coolant heater system for the cat number 2 generator. It's failed, and they want to replace it. And there should be bid for it, 2734.49. As part of their yearly test, they come across that.
What's the council think of that?
Yeah, I mean, is it malfunctioning or it just doesn't work?
It's not functioning. It's failed. They burned up a relay on it. Shorted out. That's the one that's been in there since 2002. The older, yeah.
It's gotta be done, it's gotta be done.
I'll make a motion to approve the replacement of engine coolant heater on the cat number 2 in the amount of $2,734.49.
Second.
Got a motion on the table by Aaron Gleason, second by Brian Brandt. All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0.
And hoping to have some more bids back for this underground project for the railroad out there at Port Authority. But I'm still waiting on some bids, so when I get that, I'll bring it to the next one.
How does that typically work if it costs the city for connection? Do we try to reimburse or recoup any of those costs from?
They're planning on eventually putting a industrial park out there,
Yeah,
so I'm hoping we get some money back out of that.
sure. I just didn't
For
know.
what it's gonna cost to buy poles and raise all that line up, it's just easier to go underground and be done with it.
Yeah.
Then we have Erickson and,
Do you have to get railroad permits and stuff to go under and do all that stuff?
he said as long as I bury mine, they come in and do theirs afterwards. Will be first. The only requirement he had is 5 feet deep. Other than that, we'd have to order tall poles, rebuild that whole line. And this way, we can trench in poly pipe and put our underground cable in and.
Council, got any other questions for Curtis on the power line? Anything else, Curtis?
Good for now.
Moving on, streets and water department, Jason.
The only thing I have is I need to get some salt ordered for the nitrate plant. Just need to be okay for that.
What's the amount you need?
It's gonna be a little over 6. I didn't get the final cost. It's, usually you allot me 7. And I just,
I make a motion to approve purchasing bulk salt for the nitrate plant, not to exceed $7,000.
Motion on the table by Aaron Raines, or Aaron
Gleason.
Gleason. Here, second. Second by Mark Bryant. All in favor? All opposed? Police Chief Torrey. I think you got a report in here.
I didn't get a chance to add this on the report before I sent it out. You guys follow us on our Facebook page. We're doing the February's Random Act of Kindness Month, so I'll pass this around if you guys haven't seen it. Sorry to make more copies. Me and my printer don't get along. If you guys want to nominate somebody, you can email it to me. So we'll recognize people every Friday in the month of February. And then in the report, I put in there that we were updating the range packets. I had Danny look at it first to make sure all the legal stuff sounded okay, like the release of liability and everything. I did make some copies of those if you guys would like to see what they are. They're packets. There's 2 of them there. And then here's the old packet. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably don't even know what the old packet looks like if you want to compare it and see. And then the other thing I had on there, I had a quote from, I guess, do you guys have any questions about anything else first?
No, this is nice, Tori, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanna comment, everything is pretty self-explanatory.
How many members do we have at the range? How often does it get used?
Not very often. We have about 30 that are registered each year. It's a year.
Yeah. We have like a couple in Stafford. There's like 2 or 3 people that come over from Stafford and use it, which they're very good. I mean, they're always willing to help. They clean up after themselves. They always say, you know, what can we do to help make the range better? I mean, the reason why we're kind of updating the rules and changing them is because there are some people who use a range that aren't that courteous, and we're having to replace like the boards and stuff like that. There's no fence up there. I don't think people are going out there without calling dispatch, but I mean, unless we go out there and we're checking.
You're supposed to call dispatch before you're out there.
Yeah. They call dispatch and then dispatch lets us know because we try to go check when they're done, and we used to make sure it was locked up. But now that that fence has been taken down, there's no way to like keep people out. So that's why we kind of updated the rules, just letting people know, like, if you're not following the rules, like, we can take your privileges away, and you can be, we put in there that they could be charged if they aren't like following the rules, stuff like that. But, and then we upped the fee. It's $10, but it's not a lot.
I was just gonna say,
but-
is 35 enough? I mean, I don't want to gouge people, but
I know, but
it's
I
a
didn't
year
want to.
of having access to
I know, I didn't want
to property to do something that's relatively risk intensive. I mean,
Yeah, but that's why we did the release of liability, and we're not responsible for anything that
sure.
happens.
sure,
So, Mike, do you have to cut this stuff?
yeah. I mean, I'm fine with 35 too. It just to me is like that's even.
Well, and the people who
doesn't
already
seem like a
paid, we're
lot.
not gonna make them come back in and pay $10 more. So, if anybody new gets a permit, then we'll charge them $35. We are gonna send out, Laura's gonna send out the new forms to everybody who's already paid, just so we can have them and put them in like the binder. So, Mike's gonna take that over. He's gonna be in charge of the range. That was, I mean, if you saw, like, he's going to training to be our firearms instructor, so he'll be the range master for the range, so he'll be in charge of all that.
Yeah, this report's great. Thank you.
And then, did you guys see the quote for the flock safety? I don't know if you pay attention to commissioner meetings or anything. They are getting 8 cameras out in the county that are through Flock. Flock is a
I've seen them around.
yeah. I mean, it's law enforcement all over is using them. So the county is getting 8 cameras. There's going to be 3 that'll benefit St. John, but unless we have an account with Flock, we won't have access to them. So we reached out and we had a meeting, our second meeting last Friday with them, and we have to spend a minimum of $6,000 a year to have an account.
What is, if we don't have an account, what, are we able to, if we need help from the county, you know, would they work with us to get data that we need from those?
So
Or
we would,
what's the benefit and downside of having an account versus not having
so
an account?
I think there's a lot of benefits. I'd say the downside of not having the account is we would have to if we had somebody we were watching. So we give them a tag, and then the county would have to tell us whenever we got an alert on that tag. The good thing about it is, like, if we had it, then it would not only benefit us, but it would also benefit the county, because we also have LPRs that will integrate with these cameras in our vehicles, what we already have through Axon. So if they put I've already talked to Rob, and I think Stafford's trying to. They're kind of in the same spot we are right now, but we're gonna do an agency share, so we'll all have access to each other's cameras. And the same with, I'm gonna get a hold of Great Bend, because I feel like we have the people that we have issues with, a lot of them go to Great Bend, so we're gonna see if we'll do an agency share with them, because you can share all your data with everybody. And so that way we can track, like, if we put in a tag in our and put it in like a hot list, it'll alert us whenever that tag is ran wherever a Flock camera is. Like, we'll get real-time alerts for it. So, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And I noticed I think maybe it was in Pam's report,
On which one?
that we're going to get rid of the
Oh, yes.
INA.
Yeah, not the cameras.
Not the camera.
We own
Their
the cameras.
service.
I mean, that's what I couldn't remember.
The benefit with these, so they're Vigilon, we talked to the Flock guy, and he said they can integrate those cameras. So maybe we'll actually be able to get some use out of the cameras that we've already spent all this money on. They said that Vigilon, which they are the brand they are, that they integrate with Flock.
Let me ask you this, just from the last meeting we had about these cameras, weren't they here and they allegedly fixed the problem we were having, but I guess they didn't fix it?
They fixed it, but it's a constant problem.
Okay.
I think we finally decided it was a connection problem. Like, it seems like their pictures are so distorted because of the connection between the camera and like the servers. And like, I kid you not, every other week or every week, maybe twice a week, I get an email saying that, hey,
Yeah.
your camera's down.
And then they charge us when they come out.
Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you this, so, you know how we've been caught off guard a couple times for software updates?
Mm-hmm.
So I know these are gonna work with these cameras now, but in the future, are we gonna have to have more cost because the software is gonna be updated?
For
maybe
Flock
the
or Vigilon?
Flock using these
So we won't own
cameras.
these cameras. We'll lease them. So
Oh,
if the
okay.
cameras break, they'll come out and replace it because we pay for lease them. So we don't have to do any upkeep on the cameras. But we do own the footage. They can't share any of our footage that the cameras pick up.
I think I missed something, I thought we could use that system with our cameras. The cameras we have now,
They integrate.
they integrate.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna bring in their own cameras as well and put them,
Yeah,
In the
two.
city.
I think
Two.
2 was the minimum we had to get to meet the $6,000 because you have to pay $6,000 a year.
A
That's
year.
their minimum to have accounts, and then you can have unlimited amount of accounts.
so if we stop the service with this is it INA? Are they gonna come take their equipment?
No, that equipment is ours.
We own it?
bought
Oh,
them.
okay.
We
Yeah.
bought those cameras.
Got it. Okay.
The Flock guy, our sales guy, he's the one who actually told us that he thinks we're having a connection issue because he said we actually really do have really nice cameras, and that's like one of the top cameras. And I took a video. I was looking through footage the other day, and I took a video, and I said, "This is what our camera footage looks like." And he was like, "Something's going on there. You need to
So
check your connection issues."
They can integrate, but can Flock fix our connection issue? Like, can they come out and fix our cameras?
I think ours has. I'm not really sure because I'm not like a tech person, but I think we need to do something with like whatever Wi-Fi or whatever's feeding the internet source to those cameras. I think it's not connecting. I don't know if it's just from.
There's an antenna
There.
that talks to our water tower, right? It's going back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know if that connection's bad or what.
They fixed that once already. They climbed up the water tower and fixed something up there, but I don't know if it's broken again or not. You can't even tell what kind of vehicle going through those cameras. It's bad.
And sometimes it's not. There's sometimes where I've looked at the cameras and they've worked and the picture was clear. And then the other day I went through for the city's thing about that house that got torn down. I looked through weeks of footage and it was just really frustrating because yes, there was no one that went to that house, but if someone would have, I don't think I would be able to tell what kind of vehicle it was just because that camera, for some reason, the feedback, it was just laggy and it looked like I was watching it in slow motion, but it was real time. So I don't know how to fix that issue.
How quickly are county getting theirs in, and what's your
Counties is gonna take longer, he said, because they've already been approved. But theirs is gonna take longer because they have to go through KDOT because since they're gonna be out in the county, they have to do all these like permissions and they don't own the poles. They actually said that if we got approved, we would probably get ours way before them because we could put them on poles that the city owns and they wouldn't have to go and get permission from KDOT and whatnot from the state. That's what's taken long on theirs. They have the equipment ready, but they can't install it until KDOT gives them the go ahead, I guess.
How long is this quote good for?
2 weeks, I think. Yeah,
I assume
February
it doesn't
14th.
change much though.
I don't know.
And what do we pay INA currently? $300 a month?
300 a month on top of if we have any other bills that they need to come out and work on our system.
It's like twice as expensive as INA.
It's depending on how long, if they can
Depending
do
on
it.
if they come out. but
Yeah.
The
yeah.
subscription itself is a commitment of twice as much as INA.
Yes.
Is INA's coming out of the police budget currently?
Yes.
Is there any maintenance contract on them cameras that's not working?
No.
Tori, this gives you access to more than just the cameras that the city put on, right?
Correct. This would give us access to the county's cameras and
For sure,
any
county and maybe Stafford and maybe.
well any other agency that shares. Like I know like Wichita, they share with everybody in the state.
Oh, you don't even have to have an individual agreement with them? You just,
No.
interesting.
Ours is we just like it gets
And that's-
confusing because we have Axon and we have and then this is Flock. But our Axon we have LPRs so that we have the license plate readers in our vehicles. So those would just benefit everybody else and we would be able to put in like a certain if we had a tag, we would be able to put in, you can put in a partial tag, anything like that. And we'd actually be able to get those real time alerts like in our vehicles as well as like others and then like other like whatever NCIC puts on like within their hot list, so like tags from Amber Alerts, stolen vehicles, wanted, anything like that.
I mean, I guess we have cameras up now, but we have rights within city right of way to put cameras up. There's no issue with that at all.
You mean like the privacy issue?
Yeah, I mean, just like we have utility right of way, we have city right of way down the streets, and that includes security equipment, cameras, that kind of stuff. There's no issue there.
I think on this one too, there wouldn't be where the cameras are.
I mean, it's public
And
road, so usually
houses.
there's
Right.
not an assumption of
Mhm.
privacy because you're on a public roadway. But
Mhm.
I just am curious. I just didn't know the way the
Yeah.
right of way works that you're allowed to do that.
I would
The-
assume that we are. I mean, I can only double check
Yeah.
and look at them, but
none of these would be like in like the residential areas because I mean I guess we could decide where we want them, but the flocks team whatever. So the first meeting they map out and they tell you
Kind of
where they
best
like, and they think that the best location would be on 1st and 4th. That way, like if we are looking for a certain tag, like our cameras would tell us if they came into St. John or if they kept going, like didn't come through our town.
Are they? I mean, can they be moved pretty easy? Like,
Yeah, they said
like
that
when
if
Fifth gets paved and that becomes a
Mhm.
thoroughfare through.
they
town.
said if we put in there and we decide that that's not the best for us, they'll come out and like their team will like map and like tell us other locations that they think are the best and they'll move them for us.
So
Am I
what
missing anything that
do we need to do on this?
You can approve it, or you can take a little bit more time to do more research. That's up to you guys.
I think we ought to get the ones that we got figured out what's wrong with them before you move on to other things. That, or if you're gonna do away with them, do away with them.
Well, I'm canceling our contract with them no matter what, whether you get the flock today or not getting it today, because I am like,
Do we need to have them? Do we need to have pay them to come out and fix them and get the signal working and stuff before we cancel that?
I don't
So that
know,
they're
I'm just,
operable?
I feel like I'm being robbed because to my understanding that $300 was supposed to cover everything, like the fixing and everything. Turns out it was not. And then we keep getting the bills because they keep having to fix our system, and I am not
Yeah, I
happy
thought
with
that
that at all.
that $300
So-
was for them to come
Like a
out and
service
maintain our.
contract.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's just to tell us, hey, your cameras aren't working.
Yes,
Wow.
and that's really making me mad. So
Well, in that case, then council probably needs to make a decision whether we get rid of them or we're gonna fix them.
Well, they won't go away because we own the cameras.
So if we cancel the contract, we still will
Okay,
have those
But
cameras.
the camera's not useful if we don't get it fixed. And maybe they aren't the right person to fix it. Maybe there's another servicer that can come out and figure out the signal issue, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, if we own it and it's
I
still going to
see
be
your
on the pole,
point.
we should get
Yeah.
it fixed.
Will Flock come out and work on it?
I could ask him. I didn't even think to ask them that. I'll ask the guy if maybe they can help us with the connection issue.
Well, if they plan on integrating them,
Yeah.
then that'll be an excuse for them to go and work
Right.
on them, and
Make
figure
sure
out
the signals.
what the connection problem is.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm all for this. I think this is really good.
I just really like these. I mean, I know it'd only be 2 of them and it's only on that side of town, but I think it would be beneficial not just for the city of St. John, but for the rest of the county. And
You just sign a 1-year contract at a time. Is that?
it's just a yearly thing. So I mean, in a year, if it didn't benefit us, if I were like, hey, they didn't really do anything for us, then
Right.
we could be like, we're not going to renew our
Right.
contract.
Gotcha. Okay.
Again, this gives us access. Like if we're watching a vehicle, we can put in our own tags at this point, and then we can see wherever they go, wherever there's flock cameras. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the one theft case we worked here where there was like $16,000 worth of equipment that got stolen, and our cameras picked up the vehicle, but we couldn't read the tag and we couldn't get like a make and model on it. It was at night, so it was black and white. We couldn't tell, but then we tracked a like vehicle, and Hutch, their flock cameras actually picked it up, and that's where we were able to tell where the vehicle went, and it ended all the way up in Newton because they had flock cameras in that part of the state, so it was able to track that vehicle wherever it went. But it would have just been easier if we would have had flock. It would have picked him up and we would have got it right away. But I mean, I know that's just one example, but pretty much all of law enforcement is going to it. I mean, Pratt County,
Yeah,
Barber County. I don't.
I think they're on 281
Mhm.
all the way down to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, we are kind of like the only gap in between, which the counties, because they're putting their cameras, 3 of them on 281, because they'll have one at the roundabout, one just south of St. John, like by the overpass, and then one north of town, up on 4th Street, is it?
K9.
Or is it
K19,
K19.
I think.
So,
What does the rest of council think?
I'd be fine with it, but yeah, I would like to get our cameras where we could at least have access and use them.
I do too.
yeah, I can show you. I did take a video. I don't know if it's.
And it may not, if INA hasn't been able to figure it out, then I would do some research and see on the make of the camera and maybe reach out to the make of the camera and see if they have some contractors that could come out.
This is
So,
real time.
It could be how it
starts to do
uploads
that.
to the program that they use too. I mean,
So-
Flock might, they might tie in.
After watching 2 weeks
Like they might have to
footage
put
from that, I was
a,
like, I'm
I don't
These
know,
use
uh,
LTE,
it's just very,
right?
it's
right,
hard to-
yeah, I mean, I don't know what Flock uses, but they might, their way of uploading to their system might be different than what INA's
stretching it out.
alert, or their
That's real
method
time.
of doing
It's
it, and
not
that might
slow
solve the
down or
problem.
anything.
I mean, if Flock uses a cell phone signal and INA alerts using Wi-Fi, then it's not gonna be a problem if they integrate. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I'll check on that for INA.
Yeah.
So
Check.
we have to spend $6,000, and then he said a year, correct?
Mhm.
So is
Yeah.
that our charge?
With the 70,
7,300 for the first year to set up.
yeah,
the
say the
camera
next
and-
year would be 6,000 because
and then-
that's the one-time fee on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 6,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there is the one-time fee for the services, the implement fee. It's $650 per camera.
Okay.
But after that, and I don't. Yeah, yeah, it's on there. On the quote there. So 6,000 after that.
You need a motion to cancel service with INA.
You have money in your account
would
to
say
do that,
so.
or is it coming out?
Yeah.
Since it
It'll
was
still be out
approved-
of our
the contract was
budget, yeah.
approved through you guys, probably the formal way to do
Is there a
it.
cancellation on that contract?
Not that I can see on the original contract, because we already passed the time, like, cause you know, there's some company that's like, you can't cancel
But we
for a certain
never,
amount of time.
we never like re-signed the contract, we just.
No, yeah.
I'd make a motion to cancel our servicing contract with INA for our current cameras.
Got a motion on the table by Aaron Gleason,
Second.
and a second by Aaron Raines to cancel the INL camera. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0.
I'd make a motion to enter a contract and purchase, well, and have Flock install 2 cameras, in the amount of $7,300.
Second.
Got a motion on the table by Aaron Gleason and a second by Brandt. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Moving on.
And then I just have
Archie.
one last thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're doing the lunch and learn, February 7th, if you guys would like to come to that, or don't, because I don't like public speaking, so.
Lunch and learn, she's doing it, she's speaking about
Vaping.
vaping, yeah.
The library
yeah.
and Eco Devo, they do lunch and learns every year, and they try to do them the first Friday of every month, and I guess it's my turn again, so they asked me to do a class on vaping for parents and educators, just like what to look for and whatnot.
What's for lunch?
So. I don't know. I asked Ryan that when he was here, and he wouldn't tell
Steak.
me. So
Put me down.
yeah. So
Will there be a vape break?
Mike said that he was going to sit in the corner and vape the whole time so they can see what it's like.
Any more questions for Tori before we move on from council? No other questions? Fire Chief Michael,
I don't have anything.
City Clerk Pam.
Do you guys have any questions on my report? I do, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought it was a good idea for you to get with EBH for the infrastructure, and have him help you. This will have a baseline.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I kind of talk with the guys, but, you know, there's so much, and obviously, they're not familiar with a lot of the system, so I just think it'd be better just to talk to Joel and see what he can do.
Do you know if there's a charge for that?
Yes,
How
sir.
much?
He said with what I have I told him that I want, like, a plan for each infrastructure. The main concern would be the water and the sewer system because, you know, water is so expensive to fix, so we haven't really done much to it. Our sewer pond needs some attention and haven't really been worked on, so those two are the priority. The rest, the streets, curb and gutters and stuff like that, I want to see the separate bid for that, because if the water and the sewer is going to be too much, like, you know, let's say it costs $15,000 for water and sewer, then we might not do street till like later on, you know. So he said that with what I have given him, it's going to be between 7 to 10,000. So, but he's going to try really hard to stay around 7.
Okay.
But we won't need to approve that until.
No, yeah, he'll give me a formal bid at the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And then with meeting with the Smiths, that went pretty well.
Yeah, they had, and I reached out to him. I had to talk to Joel. I figured my schedule was probably easier to manage than his. I think they're open to it. They had some good questions asking, what's this going to do to their property? What's it going to look like? You know, pose any kind of danger to kids or animals on the property. So forwarded those questions to Joel. He gave me a date that he can meet with them. So I'll get back in touch with the Smiths, give them what he provided, and then see if we can all get together. But I think his answers should take care of most of their concerns. So then we'll probably come back to you guys with, here's where it's at.
We have a couple weeks away.
You know, he's available next week, so I'll call
Time to
Danny
talk
Smith
to
and
him.
see if he is, and then kind of go from there.
And nothing is being put outside of the easement, or there's a little bit, or on our current easement, except maybe on Danny's. He said like a little bit
Across,
of the flume will
across Danny's, and then the property that his dad lives on.
Right, the drainage easement, but no permanent structure.
There's
It's
gonna
just
be
a flume.
There's gonna be a strip of concrete, I think, that goes into it, and then it sounds like they've got to do a little bit of grading or something to make sure the water flows.
Okay.
And then Danny had questions on, well, where's it gonna end up? It's not just gonna pool here, is it? And I said, I don't think so, but
I mean,
I'm not the
currently it
right
goes out
person
of
to
their field
answer.
right now.
Yeah.
It's just the way that.
he did suggest a community pond.
Which is
Just
Danny did?
FYI, yeah.
Which
I kind of like
seems
it.
like a pretty decent idea.
Yeah.
So a little fishing pond. And
Yeah.
Is he offering a donation of their pasture to put in a community pond?
That'd be fun for the kids. So. And the other thing that I want to ask is the conference in March. You know, I put it in there that Jason and Curtis wants to go, but obviously there has been problem in the past, and
One time.
yeah, one time, and it wasn't that big of a problem, honestly.
I'd say do it.
So,
I would just say make sure your teams are well briefed and available, that your next guy in charge is able to mitigate a potential emergency
Well,
for an hour and a half while you drive home.
I'm just gonna go ahead and forget it this year, because just leaving, you know, we got the new ones this year, and I figured.
but both
I'll
of the
just
new
let
ones
Kurt-
are going, and you need the hours. Why wouldn't you go?
Well, I know, but I just hate to leave one new guy here and then have Dale and then.
But
then
both
just
of
leave
your
it.
new guys are going.
I'll catch a class and catch my hours up. It's not a big deal. I'll get it caught up. So I'm good.
Okay.
I mean, if you change your mind, I think it's.
I'm totally okay.
Wichita's
with
not
it.
that
Yeah,
far.
I appreciate it.
You can,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
if you get thinking about it, then
I'll catch him up.
I don't think it's a big issue. Keep your phone on you.
On this other issue on the backside, the animals, when do you think that's gonna be resolved?
So that's all depend, because it has to go through the county. So that's all depend on how fast we operate. I'm pretty sure the case already been filed, but I
Okay.
don't have a timeline on that one. So
Okay. So,
Anything else Pam.
That's all
Council,
I got.
any more questions for Pam? Danny?
I think the only other thing that I have that we haven't talked about is, suit we filed to get into the old church. I don't see that the service has been made yet. He's set on the municipal court docket too, so I'll bring a copy of the paperwork with me, and if nothing else, if he's there then I can serve him with that and get it going, but I haven't got the sheriff's return back yet, so.
Okay.
And that's set next week, so. Should have that served, and then once he gets served, we can get a hearing date set and start going forward.
You have a different case with him that you'll see him as basically,
I think so.
okay.
Council got any more for Danny? Old business, Fifth Street, White Food Line Road.
We kinda covered the easement. Keep us updated on that. Thanks for sending the email, Danny's response. Or not Danny,
New business.
Joel's.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said Joel's name. I was correcting myself.
We don't have to do this. This is not ready.
What's that?
Oh, okay.
The resolution.
Oh,
We gotta get the
That's
easement.
Okay, under new business, you'll find a picture of the fountain in your packet. Pam's
Yes.
done some work.
So I don't know what your thoughts are, but something really needed to be done to the fountain area, or the fountain itself. Personally, I would like to see it being replaced. Granted that we have dumped a lot of money in there and it's not fixing the problem. If you guys still wanting to continue trying to fix it, I need some direction of where to contact or who to contact, because the contact I have, we have tried it and it didn't work. So
The buoy on top is in good shape. We had that redone or?
the buoy is looking okay, but the umbrella you can start to see, because the umbrella and the buoy was redone. The umbrella you can start to see the ruts coming through, but the buoy not so much. The buoy's still in a good shape, but the umbrella is getting there again. So what I thought was gonna work didn't work.
He's already starting to show signs of rust on him too.
Yes.
Already.
That right there on the, in your packet, it's, there's not a dimension of the weight of the fountain and, stuff like that, so Bobby was talking and he wants to see the dimension and, the coating of the new fountain. You know, it's made out of concrete, so, we can choose colors to go on the fountain. He was having questions about the duration of that coating and,
There's a copy.
what's gonna be coated with basically and how long it's gonna last and stuff like that. I have reached out to the company and they, obviously it's gonna depend on the weather, the quality of the water, how long those coating is gonna last, you know, but as far as the fountain itself, it's made out of concrete, so unless we get a really big hail, I don't think we're gonna run into issue that we're running into, having to replace it. Maybe recoat it, but it sounded like they didn't really have any problem for at least 20 years, so finger crossed, but that's, you know, down in a different state as well. They don't have the same water that we do, so.
so is this 16,000 you're talking about? Or what's this
That's for
invoice
the new
for?
fountain.
That's for the new
LEDs.
fountain.
Okay, that we're talking about. It
Yes,
has a 20-year
yes.
lifespan.
Yes,
That
the
won't have
coating, the coating on the
Oh,
fountain,
it has 20-year lifespan.
yes,
It won't have a buoy on the top of it.
yeah.
It's an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much have we put into the repair of the,
I put it, yeah, I put it on the report, I can't remember,
In
but
the
it's
city
like
clerk?
around 18, yeah. 18,000 is what we put in so far, just on the fountain itself, the bowl and everything, that's separate, and we put about 10 grand into the bowl, and that's in good shape, so we don't have to worry about that. And I did check, well, Curtis checked with the company to make sure that the base that we have would work with the new fountain, and it will. So, I just, I get I get worried because, you know, it's like it's our town history and I hate to replace it, but I hate to dump any more money into it as well, so,
Yeah, if it's just gonna continue to deteriorate.
yeah.
So what did we used to do with that fountain?
What
Like,
did we
isn't
used to
that the
maintain
same
it?
fountain we've had forever and ever? Like, why is all of a sudden?
Been there since 19, I don't know, I remember
I think
70.
it's almost 100 years, it's on
Yeah.
that flag, so,
So why are we, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we're all of a sudden having rust issues.
yeah, I can't
I
answer
mean, with
that,
your
so.
time on the council, you guys weren't having to redo it every couple of years, right?
We never did.
And maybe that's the problem, is that there's no preventative action that's taken or in maintenance that you know, like taking place on it. So when the rust start and then it's just keep on going until it's get to where we were. That would be my guess if I have to guess. So, because since I've been here, there was no maintenance that was done until 19.
But we redid it in 19, and then we redid it again a couple of years after that, right?
Yes.
And then now we've redone it twice in about 6 years.
So the whole fountain, we did it once, but the umbrella and the buoy, we did it twice. Cause the year before, I didn't want to do the whole fountain again. I want to test to see if the buoy and umbrella will hold before I do the rest of the fountain. So, just, yeah,
And
one
it's
time.
not.
It's not. Yeah.
I just wonder if the materials over the years are just getting.
Well, it just seems like all of a sudden it's come to a head and we've dumped a lot of money and we're having issues to where it's
I don't know if
Old
it's
fountain that-
because we never really looked at it or pay attention to it that much until I started, because I have a thing about like the square. I want it to look tip-top shape, and I started to notice that. And then I started bringing it to like Jamie's attention, and then it kind of trickled from there. But I don't think that much. I mean, like our guys just go in and mow. They don't really
Sure.
do maintenance on anything else, you know. So unless I don't know, I can't tell you. So
Well, it doesn't seem
I don't
sustainable to
know.
keep having to dump large amounts of money into it every few years, but, I mean, there'll probably be some people upset that the original fountain is gone too.
and that's
If
what I'm
we-
scared of, is that
Yeah, that's probably gonna happen, that's a
I think your idea of offering it to the museum is,
Oh, yeah.
if you put a new one in, you need to do something like that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Who have we had do the restoration? I mean,
that US 281 was the first time upholstery. That was the first time that the whole fountain was taken down and they did the work on it. The second time, I took the boys on the umbrella to the company Stryker Welder in Pratt. They do like sandblasting and coating and that kind of stuff. So
have you done much just Google searching on like steel fountain restoration?
I
like-
did, and there was a company in California that deal with like rust on like older vehicle. You know, they kind of like fix rust and stuff on an older vehicle. But I didn't know, like, to have him come out here just to look, that's gonna be expense in itself. And like I said, I didn't know how much more money you guys wanna dump into it as far as yeah, I mean, if you guys are reluctant, I can definitely reach out to that company and see how much it would be for them to come out and look. I'm sure that if they were able to fix it, we're gonna have to ship the fountain out there, and that might cost too. So
Is the boy actually cast too?
I think the whole thing's cast.
Yeah, it's rusting from the inside out.
Trust me, I don't want to be this in this position that we have to do this either, cause I lose sleep over it a lot of nights thinking about replacing the fountain, but something has to be done to it, so.
So would you donate or give to the museum if this goes through the whole fountain?
If they want
or
it,
just
yes.
the top guy?
Yeah, if I'm planning on donating the whole thing if they want it, if they have room for it. And I was just thinking when Carol was in here that if the museum doesn't want it, maybe Gray Studio would want it.
I wonder,
What do you mean?
The top guy, yes. Maybe the top bowl, yes. But from that below,
so,
I think the weight and getting it in there is gonna be a total different story.
It's several
Oh.
thousand pounds.
I don't think the floor would hold it.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I just wonder, too, if you're not
That's
running
what we
water through it, you could give a bowl or something to the museum, and you could almost make refinish it, but not anything crazy, so it's not rusting out. But if you're not running water through it, and make a light post or something out of the base and the buoy or something that is off to the side, that's a memorial of the original fountain, and kind of repurpose the structure and not run water through it, not continue the deterioration, but have something there for it.
That's a good idea.
But then you wouldn't necessarily have to sandblast and do the whole 9 yards of refinishing everything, but you could make it presentable and repurpose the structure.
You'll have to replace some of that decorative design on it, it's rusted.
That's rusting away. Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, you guys don't have to make decision on it tonight. I mean, maybe sleep on it. If you come up with a better idea, reach out and we can try that direction. I mean, I'm all open to about trying to save what we have, but that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make a motion to move the fountain discussion to old business.
Second.
Got a motion on the table by Aaron Gleason, a second by Bryant. All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0. Move it to old business. I hate to see the old fountain, not something done with it.
Do you guys know anybody that would build like the replica, like the exact replica of it?
I don't.
That would be another thing to
Sure,
go.
but a lot of money will find
Fix the
somebody
problem.
to do whatever you want.
How much you want to pay?
I'm sure there's custom casting places where you can, with enough research and enough money, you can do a lot of things. But
Yeah.
Unless there's any more business, I'll entertain a
I
motion.
got something real quick.
Hang on.
On those animals that we're housing, that's not a city case, that's a county case, so if the city wants restitution on that, we just have to bill an invoice, and we can ask for that in the resolution of the case of restitution from them using the land from if convicted. So, if that's something, it wouldn't be from the county, it would
it'd
be
be
from,
from the owner.
if that's something you guys want to do. You don't have to, but I figured I would mention that. If you do, we'll have to generate some kind of like cost, whatever the city is asking for, and I would file it with the case, and then the county attorney would ask for restitution in the resolution of the case.
Is it taking a lot of time and resource to?
We had a citizen that helped move the animal out there and helped taking care of the animal. We did have to buy the water tank and the heating lamp out there for the animals, so the water will.
We can invoice that.
Yeah, that will be, we send it to the county with the case, so, but he's not donating food, right?
No, the county is paying him. We hired him
Okay,
to help move
yeah,
the animals. So he's invoicing the county, and the county will pay him, and then the county was gonna ask for restitution at the end of the case.
I mean, I don't mind asking for restitution.
It's not something you have to decide now. I think it'll take a while with the way court is, but I figured I would mention that since we brought it up. If you guys want to.
Yeah, I mean, we're not running a charity,
Right.
and that's not.
Yeah.
And it's a criminal case. It's not like.
Correct.
Yeah, I would.
Felony at that. So.
Yeah, I would ask for restitution, and if they say no, they say no. But I would set a precedent that the city's
Yeah.
not going to do that just because.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. How many animals are there? Just
A lot.
16.
14, 18, yeah, something like that, 16, 18. Yeah, it's a bad thing.
I second what I just said.
You got a motion on the table?
Second.
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't know.
I don't need a motion,
Okay.
but
No,
I just need the.
Yeah, you do consensus.
You guys can just get that to me, and I'll file it with the county. I'll take it over with other invoices from others for that.
If there's nothing else, we'll entertain a motion. Again,
I'd make a motion to adjourn regular council meeting February 4th, 2025.
you got a motion on the table by
Second.
Aaron. Here a second.
Second.
Second by Aaron Raines. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes. Again,
Huh?
Adjourned.
adjourned.